Yeah, and I think even more so with the way that like job recruiting is going with like the AI as the gatekeeper and everything. If you have those connections that are inside somewhere, that helps a lot.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 97 of the Sandbox Space Weekly podcast. We are so close to 100. I, of course, am your host, Chris, joined by Pumpkin, who's right there. Baby is not with us today. She is in another place, but I did want to give a quick little shout out that Baby turned 14 last Sunday. So 4 days ago, she turned 14. So that's exciting. But also, every week we have a special guest. This week's guest is Duke, a longtime colleague, friend, and supporter of GDEX. You were one of the first sponsors and supporters of GDEX. You were showcasing your games for many, many years. Brian, welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing okay. How you been?
I'm all right. We're doing what we can. I'm trying to get this cat to sit down here. Yeah, we were talking in the
Then
green
we got
room about cats.
reaching here.
hmm so Pumpkin, she has been a sweetheart, but also since I'm only home for a couple hours a day, when I am home, she just wants to totally be all over me. Um, and so, there's worse things in the world than having your kitty want to spend time with you. And I feel bad because she's just by herself in this house for many, many hours, but she's doing good. She's not destroying anything. Everything is, you know, is fine. But uh, s-
Now, if she wants attention and you like ignore her, will she start like trying to do things she's not supposed to do to get attention? Like my cat, one recent thing she recently has started doing to try to emotionally manipulate me when I'm not paying enough attention is to start eating the trash bag.
no, no, she Pumpkin. You'll notice at some point she'll probably start like trying to kiss my nose and stuff. That's kind of her thing when she wants some attention and whatnot. So I'm sure that will happen within the next hour here. But Duke, for those who don't know, why don't you just let folks know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm a longtime software engineer. I've long been interested in game development. Uh, got I start out in my career like over on commercial line of business software development work, uh, and then what was it, about 15 years ago? Yeah, it was when I started Smiling Cat Entertainment. I just started treating it like a second job, putting time into it every week, releasing games. None of them really any good,
Oh,
as it turns out.
I wouldn't say that, but
Um, well, none of them have been commercially successful. Let's put it
yeah.
that way.
Well, that's a different thing. I
Um, so then, yeah, just kind of putting my time in there, and then what was about like three what was it 4 years ago? Decided to that I had enough of corporate software development. I was going to do game software development full time. Uh, Started out, just going out on my own, trying to take Smiling Cat Entertainment, my game company that I was developing full time. Uh, that went fairly disastrously. Yeah, did have a stream of revenue for a while, but that dried up, and so then I was like, well, might as well look for full-time work doing game development. Landed myself a position there about you know well, coming up on 3 years ago right now, and have been pretty happy with that since as a senior engineer.
awesome. Yeah, the indie game space is tough. It's a tough space, and it's even probably worse now than when you left it. It's just trying to get any sort of funding from investors and publishers is just not going to happen. And then on top of that,
Right.
it's very competitive out there. So just trying to get your game seen is really challenging. It's tough times. I teach my students at Columbus State. I've been doing that for. I actually just crossed the 10-year mark in August, I think, and just letting them know that it's a tough competitive field to be in. So if you can find a place that you enjoy working, that's getting you some funds at the moment, probably a good time to just sort of ride that wave for a bit.
Right.
So
Make networking connections, build those connections, because you never know when you'll be
absolutely.
talking to these people again in the future.
Yep. I say this all the time. Obviously, we throw GDEX. I'm going to the Game Developers Conference next week where I'm going to be trying to network. But I tell my students this all the time, and I tell folks that are in the game space, like, you need to be building those connections, because
Absolutely.
that's ultimately how you're going to get connected to potential opportunities, whether it's job opportunities, events, publishing deals, whatever it happens to be. And funny enough, I posted a video, I don't know, a month ago or so on my YouTube channel, and one of my previous students responded to it and was like, "Oh, hey, I used to be in one of your classes." He's like, "I failed 2 times, but then I came back." And uh, just like, I'm just now beginning to realize how important it is to go to places and start connecting and socializing with other colleagues. He's like, "I know you were saying that all the time." And I was like, "Yep, I say it because it's true. It's very important." And I know, like, for example, GDEX, I think, is a very affordable show for the value we provide and the size. This year, the most expensive ticket you can buy if you're like not a student and you wait to not get any of the deals is going to be $350 for the conference badge, which is not nothing, right? $350 is a lot of money. Now we've got all sorts of deals going on, and if you're a student, you can get it for like 150, so you're like saving a lot of money. But going to something like that, like, the difference between going to no things and going to one thing a year is huge. Like, just making that little bit of effort. So you're like, "Hey, I'm going to spend $350. It's an investment in myself. That's 3 days. Actually, that pass gets you access to Dev Day. So that's 4 days of educational workshops, seminars, new tech stuff, but also the networking events. Go to the networking events, go to the exhibitor mixers. Go if there's somebody you want to chat with. It's hard, the past, or I guess when you first started doing GDEX, you were exhibiting. It's harder to break away when you actually have a booth and you're exhibiting something. But even if you could just be like, "Hey, let's go get lunch somewhere. Let's go grab lunch or grab a drink or a coffee or whatever, and just spend 30 minutes chatting with someone." Just build those networks up. It's so important.
Yeah, and I think even more so with the way that like job recruiting is going, with like the AI as the gatekeeper and everything. If you have those connections that are inside somewhere, that helps a lot.
Yeah. I was just listening to actually, I think this was a Reddit thread for people that do headhunting and HR, like placement finding. And some of the suggestions they made. So, for example, they're like, one of the big things now that you never think of is, don't use one of the systems like Canva, any of those platforms, to make your resume, because if you're not exporting in a format like a rich text PDF format where the AI system can scan the text, then you're going to automatically get kicked out. Like to your
Right.
point, for a lot of these positions, I tell people this, in the game space, I don't know, let's say Bungie posts a job position, right? And you want to go work. For every job post that Bungie makes, they're probably getting 10,000 plus applications. Half of those immediately are just being thrown in the trash, and nobody's even looking at them. There's some automated system that's going through, and no human is looking at these documents, right? And then the next
So yeah,
then the next step is going to be, okay, well, which people sort of have the general requirements for this job? And that has to go beyond simply having a degree in software engineering or game development or whatever. You have to have experience creating products, and ideally creating
right.
products that get out to market. Um, release products are super important. And so yeah, it's super important because you hit on a really important thing. And this is what I say, like I started game development in 2012. Before that, I was in healthcare. It is now 2016, or 2026 rather, which is blowing my mind. I've been doing this for almost 15 years. Um, I have not had to apply for a job in quite a while because the opportunities that I have been taking part in, either I create with my team and community or they're brought to me through my network. So even like GDC, I'm going out to GDC next week. I've gotten my hotel room and my pass covered because of my relationships with people. I was able to get a free hotel room and a free GDC pass. And also I'm getting into, events and parties and mixers and stuff because of who I knew or who I know. But it's taken me 15 years to build that network, and
Yes.
also creating GDEX, which has been a big thing, and pulling people who would not come to Ohio into Ohio. Um, and so it's it seems like a lot, but even if you go to something, you and I just chatted at the COG holiday party, just go to the COG party or their COG events. There was one last Saturday. There's another one coming up in a couple of weeks. What do you think? There's normally 20 to 40 people there at a COG event, depending on how
Mhm.
busy it is. So it's not like an overwhelming experience. And you get to meet a lot of people. And some folks like you have been doing it a long time. Others are students who are just wanting to connect to people. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, Duke.
Yeah. And I mean, there are people there that are in the industry, either, directly and like, working for a studio or, doing co-op work and stuff like that. So those are definitely connections that are worth making.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to kind of go back because we haven't talked about it, and you sort of started off on a little bit of a bummer, where you said your smiling cow was a bit of a disaster, but you worked on some cool projects. I mean, you got things to completion. Is this
Mhm.
is this feeling just kind of based around the financial aspects of where you landed?
Well, yeah. So yes, like commercially, financially, it was a disaster. But you learn from failure, you build from failure. So while it didn't succeed in the initial stated goal, it was a success in that it helped me get in the door. And Chris, you were a instrumental part in that. Uh, with the work that we did, it was like just enough on the resume, and then like I was able to just the person that was interviewing me, the director that was interviewing me, I was able to right there immediately in the interview like speak to and help him with one of the problems, and just those little sparks was like just enough to get in the door. So yeah, I say, I say that Smiling Cat was a failure, but in its initial goal, but in other ways, it built the groundwork for further success, building off of that.
Sure. Yeah, you're always learning something. You you're obviously just learning the technical skills because you're always finding yourself trying to solve some problem in game development. Um, but you're also flexing those creative muscles. I think one of the things too that, and programmers watching, forgive me, but I find that a lot of times programmers kind of get lost in the sauce on the technical coding side of it, and they're not always
Mhm.
thinking about like the game design or the art implementation part of it. And so when you're fully in charge of creating your own product, you have to think about all those elements,
Oh, yeah.
which then I think brings you into being able to better coordinate with the different departments of the next job that you're in. Am I off on that, or does that seem fair?
No, that's completely fair, and I think that's part of what has helped these last 3 years is kit. I know, I may not have known like the double A or triple A studio way to do things, but I knew how to make and release a game end to end, all jobs. And certainly having that, but my specialty is engineering. And I think having that, T-shaped set of skills is vital in the game development industry.
Yeah, and the T shape being you've got a say a shallow understanding of multiple areas and then a deep understanding of your core specialization. But from an artist perspective, I see this too because we do a lot of like portfolio reviews and I do tons of mentoring and stuff. I've mentored thousands of people at this point. And on the artist side, one of the things that I tend to get is you'll see a portfolio of a 3D model or a scene that just looks like absolutely stunning, right? You're like, this just looks, gorgeous, but it's completely unusable in Engine. Like,
Right.
it as a one still shot where you're able to render it, and make it look great. It's awesome, but as a real-time functioning game asset, it just doesn't work. And so having artists understand what the technical capabilities and limitations are is also equally important. And then having those two teams be able to coordinate, and just I think having I'm going to talk you up a little bit, Duke, for a second here. I think having somebody that can see a set of problems and sort of strategically find solutions to them without getting too caught in the details is extremely important. And obviously, we can't go into too much detail, but there was one element on the project that we worked on together that was very problematic, mostly dealing with the fact that we were a remote team and the studio we were working with was overseas. This was during COVID, so they had to kind of quickly implement a remote work policy. But in order for us to like get anything done, in order for us to get builds done, long story, like quickly, we had to send the code to their system so that they could process it, which took somewhere between 16 to 24 hours to create a build for us.
Yeah.
And you and the other parts of the team, you found a way to significantly shorten that process so that we were ending up, we were getting builds in 2 to 4 hours at that point, I think.
Yeah. It was a dirty hack to be sure, but it got the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But like,
and yeah,
but
you have to be
that
pragmatic like that.
yeah, that's a big thing where it's like we could have just ignored it, or it could have been something where you said it's quick and dirty. You could have gotten caught and making it like the most perfect, beautiful thing. But like what we needed to do, we needed the ability to make a build because when you think about it, you're like, okay, we're working for 8 hours a day or whatever. At the end of the day, and also keep in mind we're all remote, so we're all around the world. So like just syncing time zones together is challenging enough, right?
Mhm.
But really, with the old system, we'd have to like compile all of our code at the end of the working day together to then initiate a build so that it would build itself overnight so that when we came back in the morning, it would be ready. But of course, that meant
It would
everybody had to,
pay or fail.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Everybody had to kind of shove their code together at the last minute at the end of the day to make sure it's in there. Then there's any number of things that could have gone wrong overnight where the build would fail. And we either wouldn't know it or it would just be too late to initiate a new one. So again, a big difference between being able to do a build every 4 hours as opposed to every 20 hours. That means that you could do a build at the start of the day and at the end of the day, and have an opportunity to really, look at your work instead of being on a 24-hour clock. So I think stuff like that is super important. And one of the things I think that I really enjoyed working with you about is that you found these solutions to problems for the betterment of the project and the team. And you're like, hey, this is going to help the project and the team. Whereas I think sometimes folks get into it. It's like, well, I want to make this the best thing I can so I can show off like how good of a programmer I am or whatever. And you're like, that's cool. It's good. You're a great programmer, but sometimes we just need to get things done. And
Right.
then on top of that, just being able to work because that project we had at our max, we had about 35 people working on that project. And that's it's not like Activision Blizzard, thousands of people size, but managing a code repository and all those processes for 35 people is it's no easy task. As the person who was doing it, I'll tell you, it was no easy task. But having folks on the engineering side that could kind of see that need and that vision and be able to implement processes to help that was, I mean, you made my life a lot easier, Duke. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we are in an interesting period. I'm kind of curious about your thoughts. We have seen, I don't know if you saw, this was last month, the GDC game survey, where in the last 2 years, over a third of game developers in the United States have lost their job. It's a very rough market out there. On top of that, we have AI is beginning to really show itself with lots of differing issues. So I am in the process right now of making the next GDEX, getting the GDEX up and running, and our focus is on understanding that we're kind of in the storm right now. How can we really work to support each other and be successful in this industry while also making sure that this industry sort of lives up to those good expectations that I think we all want it to? Because I mean, I love games, you love games. So I'm kind of curious on your thoughts about the state of where the industry is now overall. Since you've been in it for quite a while, you and I have gone through the ups and downs. This is not the first down we've had, but it's still a rough one. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts overall as you've been working for the past couple of years.
Uh, yeah, there's yeah, no sugarcoating it. It is in a rough state right now. Um, we just see like layoff announcements, kind of on a regular basis. Like I said, AI is kind of intruding on that and everything. As far as what we can do, yeah, I think that a lot of this solution is going to come from the bottom and from smaller teams that, you know, that maybe can leverage. I certainly, I have a pretty strong distaste for like AI generated art and everything. Uh, but it is also at the same time a very interesting tool for, at the coding level. And that's a very dangerous thing to say as an engineer, especially since the kind of the stated intent out there is for the AI to actually replace coding and engineering jobs first.
Mm-hmm.
So, or augment, rather. So, and that brings up another thing I've been thinking about lately is like, we talk about AI replacing jobs. Well, yes, that's true to some degree, but in another sense, it's going to transform the nature of the work. I think about, I think back to, like the 50s and 60s when, computers first started coming out, first started being used commercially and industrially. Have you seen the movie Hidden Figures?
Mm-hmm.
So in that movie, at the some point, that the computer arrives at NASA, and all of a sudden that this is like a big threat to like all the mathematicians that are pushing pencils and everything,
Yep.
and just kind of like can do their jobs in a fraction of the time. But the intrepid ones go in and they start learning how to use this computer. You start learning how to use it to do their work better. And by the end, the ones that were more resistant are kind of coming back hat in hand, kind of begging for instruction on how to use this new tool, because it's transforming the nature of that work. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see happen. And yeah, I do think it's going to start happening on the engineering side before everything else.
Are you
Yeah,
using AI in your sort of day-to-day goings on as an engineer right now?
we are encouraged to start exploring the use of AI to kind of augment our work. And I do have to admit, so the newer models are doing a decent job. It is kind of like having a junior coder at my disposal at all times, which again is kind of a frightening prospect for for future work. But I don't think it's a trend that's going to be able to be stopped any more than we stopped the computer or the assembly line or any of these other things that have transformed the nature of work.
Sure. Yeah, so you're in. I had a conversation with Roger Crawfus the other week, as well as Mike Geig from Unity last week about AI. It comes up in like every episode we're doing these days. Um, but you're in a unique position because one of the things we talked about with Mike was that someone with your knowledge set is able to look at a piece of, let's say, AI generated code and understand what its weaknesses are and what needs to be cleaned up. Whereas a junior programmer or even like a freshman straight out of the gates, they're not going to have that knowledge base to understand where the AI system has failed. And so I
Right.
could definitely see it as somebody from your perspective. You're like, write me this thing. It gets you like Pareto principle. It gets you 80% of the way there, and then you got to clean up the other 20%. A junior or younger dev isn't going to know that. So how do we navigate that kind of situation?
Uh, I wish I had a good answer for that. Yeah, I've had several conversations with my manager about this. It's like in a in a world where AI can do start out can start out doing junior and do increasingly more senior level work. How do we train up new people?
I was going to go there as
And
well.
yeah, yeah, how do we train up new people? One, yeah, and with the intent of spotting when the AI is leading them astray, or and we, I don't think anybody really has a good answer for that yet.
Yeah, this is one of my general concerns. It's weird. I feel like I'm in like crazy town, bizarro world here because like I have all my life I've really loved technology. Like I
Mhm.
enjoy the progress we've made in many things coming from my healthcare background. The difference in healthcare technology now compared to the 80s and 90s when I was growing up is, I mean, infinite, right? Just the ability that we have to diagnose and treat various conditions using tech is just a different world. But right now, it feels like, I would say it feels like it is, when it comes to AI, there's a bunch of extremely wealthy people making huge bets on these AI plays, and they cannot afford for it to not work. So it seems
Mhm.
like we are in this situation where we're putting all of our eggs in this basket because of all the just vast amounts of money, but nobody's really thinking through the actual use cases of this long term. So yeah, to your point, I think one of the big things is how do you train up new people? Ashley Birch, I mentioned this last week. Ashley Birch, she's an actress. She's the voice actor for Aloy in the Horizon games. But she mentioned in an interview that since AI is now replacing a lot of the general voiceover like lines and like the action barks and things like that, that there's just this big gulf where new people would normally go in, they would get to work with a voice director, they would get time in the studio, they would get experience doing these lines. Then they would move into being someone like Ashley, who is a lead character in a game or an animated show or whatever. That gulf is not being filled anymore because it's being filled with AI. And so there's all these new voice actors who don't have the opportunity to gain that experience. And I think we're seeing that in coding as well. I know OSU. We talked with Roger Crawfus about OSU really trying to push um, understanding AI in the CSE departments. But I do think it's a it's a it is a point of conversation that we need to have. And I think that branches into my next thought, which is two things where one is we may end up in a point where we're just creating subpar code in all of our products and the things just don't work very well. And you'd be like, well, humans will go in and fix it all. I'm not convinced that's true because I think we've hit a point in our sort of capitalist world where a lot of these companies are realizing they don't need to have the best product. They just need to have the product that makes the most money per investment. And that does not necessarily mean the best. And that is a worry of mine, is that we're just going to start to see, I know the word enshittification is being thrown around, but like you see this in the internet, you see this in a lot of various products. I mean, I'm old and curmudgeonly, Duke, and Google, like I was trying to do some stuff with Google because we use Google Workspace. And I do a lot of stuff on YouTube. I was ready to throw Google out the window the other day because just like I'm constantly being berated about their AI garbage. Just trying to sometimes move things or change settings or stuff is just becoming increasingly more difficult and complicated. And it just seems like the quality of everything is kind of falling apart. And this wraps into my question, which is that I think games are one of those areas where when things don't work well, it's very noticeable. Like there's plenty of, you've been in corporate software development. I'm sure you worked on some systems that were like hot garbage behind the scenes. And it does enough to like move the data around and get you where you need to go in the corporate world. But like games don't work like that. Like games need to function well. They need to be responsive. They need to not crash. And I don't know if we're moving in that direction overall with technology, but maybe I'm just being crazy. I don't know.
No, I agree. There's a number of cases where I'm asking, is technology making our lives better? And really kind of coming up with the answer, no. Uh, like we're kind of one example, we're kind of staring at our old washer and dryer. Washer, the pump is obvious, the motor is making like a lot more noise than it used to. I know it's not long for this world. I'm like, I'm like looking at my wife. I'm like, are we going to be able to find a washer and dryer that doesn't have like all these smart features enabled to where if the internet goes down, our clothes are going to be locked in the washer?
Mm-hmm.
um, it's like, and it's like, you think is why? Why? I mean, what problem are we trying to solve with these smart washers? Are they getting our clothes any cleaner? Really? Like noticeably so? It's not really. I think, they had advances in, detergents and stuff, which of course it produced chemicals that have their own concerns, but yeah, kind of work with that. It's like we don't need a big fancy touchscreen electronic interface that connects up to a smartphone to wash our clothes. We just need something on an electromechanical timer that, spins at this time and agitates at this time. And that's all we really need.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love my new car, but it's like 80% computer. And there's several things that like you can't turn off or adjust that drive me absolutely crazy that I'm not quite sure what value it's bringing to me as a user. Uh, and yeah, I agree that I think this it feels like sometimes some of these companies are just creating a feature or a product as like a differentiator, but it's not really, like you said, solving a problem. Like maybe it's a cool marketing shtick, but it doesn't really solve a problem. And I think washer and dryers are always funny because people talk about them because the older ones really they last. They last for a long time generally, and they just you can beat them into the ground until they got no life left, and then you'll move on. But at the end of the day, they're washing and drying your clothes, and that's all. That's all you need of them. We have some washer and dryers at the gym because we're doing the rags and the laundry and stuff, and we've got the old school ones, no fancy features because we're running them multiple times a day. Uh, but Yeah, in the gaming space, I do feel like it's so weird. I was having this conversation yesterday with my students where, again, when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, like the computers in the 80s were cool, right? But like they couldn't do a lot. And even some of them, particularly in the early to mid 80s, I mean, they were running off of floppy disks and things. Like they didn't even have hard drives sometimes, so you couldn't like really
Right.
do long-term storage on anything. You couldn't like offload memory into anywhere. It was just it is what it is, you know. But then in the 90s, we started to see these computers that could really begin to do cool things. And we started to see game developers take advantage of that and start thinking about, like, what's a simulated world look like? And we started getting things like Sim City and Sim Tower and Sim Ant. Remember Sim Ant? That was cool. But like the idea that we could use computers to create these different scenarios and environments. But then again, over time, it seems like we all just went towards graphics and visual fidelity, which because it's easier to sell something that looks really cool, right? As opposed to something that has like a
Right.
cool, simulation in the world or whatever. Now, that's not to say that like the advancements in graphics cards and stuff have been astounding. And of course, there's the hardware component and the software component, and now we have the AI machine learning component for visuals, which is all awesome. But one of the things that I've really been wanting to see, and I think it was something that I actually really enjoyed with your D-Hoarder game, but just the idea of using computer systems in like unique simulation ways, whether that's through physics or NPC behaviors or whatever. And we just don't see that very much in the AAA space. So I wanted to just sort of get your thoughts as someone who's, rifling around under the hood of a lot of these systems. Like, what kind of cool stuff do you think we could be exploring more in the video game space that isn't the standard mechanics or visuals?
Uh, well, one thing I've been interested in lately is, like you said, it's all been kind of focused on the visual fidelity and everything. Physics engines have kind of lagged behind, and physics based gameplay as a result has lagged behind. And it's like notoriously, but the implementations we have out there, there's just notoriously buggy things. Will just get huge impulses out of nowhere and launch across the screen
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. But there's actually some new developments that have been kind of happening in that space. What is it? Yeah, augmented vertex block descent, I think is the term. Uh, but that's kind of an exciting looking new physics engine where it advertises, that stable simulation with like tens of thousands of bodies at reasonable frame rates where you don't get things tunneling through each other and or penetrating into each other and stuff like that. So I think that has the potential to really open up a lot of physics simulation based gameplay that is frankly just kind of impossible now because it's all just sort of crap.
Yeah. 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 Physics is one of those things. I mean, I know that we're doing a lot more around physics, uh, just at its basic level, but it seems like, again, and I'm talking from like generally the AAA kind of gaming perspective. There's always indie studios doing weird, wonky stuff, cool stuff. Um, but a lot of the quote unquote physics, if you will, is just sort of baked into the level creation on the AAA space. And so, yeah, you might have some like ragdolling maybe, but even
Mhm.
ragdolling, you don't see a lot of groups using like real ragdoll anymore, probably just because it looks zany when characters are flying and flopping all over the place in this weird way.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of times when you kill an enemy or something in these AAA games, they become almost like rigid bodies connected to the play space. They're no longer you know part of any kind of physics environment. Uh, but it's been a while since we've seen something try to do stuff like Portal or whatever, where it really was trying to use physics in an interesting way as part of the mechanics, part of the system. Um, and yeah, I would love to see that. I personally would love to see more interesting, like, NPC behaviors and like, I don't know, like weather effects, but not like just visual, but like, can weather impact gameplay in some kind of cool, unique way? Uh, but also just under the hood, like what kind of what kind of cool systems could you implement where what you're doing has like a cascading effect as the game goes on? And maybe you don't notice it at first. Like genetics could be interesting in like a sim life kind of game, or um, I don't know, decision trees, decision making. Now, I realize all of this stuff is like super complicated and takes a long time to create on a game. And that's why a lot of large studios don't do it, because it's just easier to make a narrative based third person sort of action game for 12 hours than it is to create a branching narrative with multiple NPC behaviors and all that. But it just feels like we've reached the point of computer being able to do this stuff. And one of the things I've found interesting is that the hangups, I don't know if you do console gaming at all, but I play on my PlayStation, and regularly for both the Xbox and the PlayStation, uh, some of the games, I'd say within the past 2 or 3 years, that have seen some performance dips, it's been on the CPU end, not on the GPU end. So it seems like not only is it a design thing for the games, but it's a hardware thing where we're spending all of our money on the GPU end and not the CPU end, and the CPU is getting bottlenecked on some of these more complex simulation things. I know Baldur's Gate 3, I think, suffered from that. And there was a few others. I think Cyberpunk might have suffered from that a bit. So it's like we're throwing, I don't know what, like 75% of the money goes into GPUs and 25% goes into CPUs on consoles. So it just seems like it's all around, that's the direction we're going as developers.
Yeah, and even like a lot of the push is to try to move more work over to the GPU. Because yeah, let's face it, the GPU is just better and faster at math than the CPU. The CPU with its SSE and AVX and AVX2 instruction sets just has not kept up with the raw power, the raw vector math power that a GPU can bring bear on the problem.
Yeah. And also, when you're talking in the PC space, I mean, you could easily spend a computer's worth of money just on the GPU. And that's not even
Mhm.
counting the RAM and prices increases that we're seeing right now. Um, so we talked a bit. We've gone down a long and winding road here, but I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm kind of curious. Do you have anything in the back of your mind where someday you're like, I might go back to making some of my own stuff? Are you doing anything on the side right now? Or are you just kind of taking a breather and enjoying life?
I was yeah, taking a breather for a good while from it. Yeah, and yeah, just focusing on building up my career and you know making sure that in this market, if anything were to happen, I could be marketable.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I am starting to get back into some of my own independent development, kind of picking up some of the projects from early in my Unreal learning, fixing the mistakes that I made, the learning mistakes that I made in those, and taking those forward.
That's awesome. So you're starting to get the itch again to be creative. Are we gonna maybe see something at GDEX in the maybe not near future, but
Yeah,
future-ish?
probably not this year, but yeah, we'll see. But more likely, more likely at COG sooner.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to see what you're cooking on. I think this year, like I said, um, we are really working on trying to help folks be successful in surviving this craziness that is uh, the game world, the tech world right now. And so, helping people find opportunities, publishers, learn new skills and whatever. But also, uh, I just want to see what kind of new stuff people are working on, because for me, as somebody who has, as a game developer, a developer, designer at heart, I spend most of my time just sort of steering the business and making sure all that's going on, and building the community and whatnot. So the thing I like to see at GDEX is just this. It's like every year, no matter what's going on, there's still hardworking, passionate people making interesting projects. And so when we get to have GDEX and we get to throw stuff down, I mean, you came last year, right? I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, and did you see the Skookum guys? They had that camera set up because they're doing like the 3D camera modeling um, for their new game, Quiet on Set. Like, I think just showcasing that technology, I think was really cool for a lot of people because they got to see how you could implement something like that and then use it in a game. And a lot of times, I don't know. I think a lot of times we get sort of just pigeonholed into like, well, are you using Unity or Unreal? Like, well, there's other options. It's like, well, are you making a first person game or a third person game? It's like, well, there's other options. But it's hard to sometimes get into that mental creative space where you could come up with just something new and wonky. And maybe it's some idea that's just been rattling around in your brain that you can't get rid of. And who knows? It could be the stupidest thing in the world, but it might be fun to make something and put it out in the world and see how people respond. So, uh, Duke, you're on my list of projects. I want to see whatever you're kicking on. You also have the best booths. I think your D-Hoarder booth was always really cool. With you had like your setup with like all the litter and stuff around, and um, but yeah. Well, what's interesting to you? Like, what are you looking forward to in the next near future here in the gaming space and the tech space? Is there something that's on your mind that you're eager to see? What about GTA 6? You got any thoughts on GTA 6?
Uh, I don't really have any thoughts on GTA 6. And yeah, as far as like, what games I want to play, um, yeah, I've had my nose in the books here, so to speak, so long that I haven't gotten really much of a chance to play or look at much.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, just been, or even watching streaming. I don't, yeah, don't like watch games on streaming either. So,
It
um,
happens. We all get busy. Everything comes in cycles. I was just talking to a friend the other day about being like creative, because I think that creative projects, um, they sometimes take like you'll be really into something for a while, and then you might spend 2 or 4 weeks not doing anything, and you just need that time for your brain to like dump everything and to just kind of like refresh, which is not how the business world works, right? It's 9 to 5 every day. You go
right.
in and you be creative, but sometimes you just need that mental break. So, but anyway, you were also
Yeah,
going to say something.
I do think like if you're going to, if you're going to innovate and come up with some new gameplay or anything, yeah, it's probably something you'll have to do on your own dime. Unfortunately, because companies, um, the people, publishers and everything, they don't like to take risks, and anything that's significantly new like that is a risk. But that doesn't mean that those things shouldn't happen, and
Yeah.
they need to happen, I think, and I think that's going to kind of be our way out of this funk that we're in, is for those things to happen, is for those passion projects to, get further developed and, released and get in front of people.
Totally. Yeah, I was watching a video about, I can't remember what it was about, unfortunately, but I remember it was about like it's either a movie or a game or something from the 90s, and they were talking about just how weird it was, and this idea of like a franchise. And I was talking to this person. I was like, the thing was in like the 80s and 90s, creators, more, I guess, more importantly, businesses and investors, they didn't look at things in terms of a franchise. They looked at things as like, hey, we're going to create this product, this game, this movie, this whatever that we think is cool and has this awesome idea. And if it happens to catch on, then we'll make some sequels and whatnot. But it seems like most of the companies, I know even like Ubisoft, I think has said this, where they only make products that they can franchise. And that goes to what you were saying, where it starts to become a real risk aversion thing. If your first and foremost goal is to create something that you can franchise for the next couple of decades, then you're far less willing to take risks on weird stuff that might end up becoming a franchise. Uh, and I would love to see more of the larger studios, which is funny because Ubisoft had this for a bit. It was their, I forget what it was called. Was it Ubi Creative or something? It's where we got Rayman out of. But they had a smaller division within Ubisoft that would just work on AA games that just had cool ideas, but weren't going to be like Assassin's Creed or something, right? And I don't think that that exists anymore. And I would just love to see, like I had an idea. I think this is weird. I'm just kind of rambling here, but I was like, how cool would it be to be able to use Naughty Dog's like Last of Us engine to create like a tower defense game or something, right? Like I think that would be really cool and be able to like walk around in your town as you're creating a tower defense system to keep out the infected. And it doesn't have to be this giant AAA experience. It could be just like a cool game that they create and throw up on Steam, that could build an interesting following around it. Um, it seems like they have all these tools. I would love to be able to go in and fool around with some of these tools. It's similar to the project that we worked on together where they had this larger tool set for a specific type of game. And then we started thinking about, okay, well, how can we use these tools in a slightly different way to create a new experience? And I personally would love to see more stuff like that. But so I guess as we get in our last couple of minutes here, you are you're in your space. You're in a good space. I'm happy for you. I'm glad. It sounds like you've got good things going on. Uh, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How can somebody like you, who's been in the industry for a while, has extensive experience within both your skill set, but also in working with teams, how could folks like you help out, indie studios, students, other people in the community, maybe provide what would be some pieces of insight you could provide here to folks that are, maybe trying to find their way right now?
Well, I would say, don't, yeah, one, don't give up if you're out there, applying for jobs and everything. It takes an obscene amount of applications to get an interview, and an obscene amount on top of that, multiplied on top of that to, actually land a position a lot of times. So yeah, definitely don't give up and stay on that. Yeah, submit applications regularly and stuff like that. Uh, be out there. Have a portfolio that people can look at and and see what you're capable of. Especially if you don't have a lot of experience to be able to sell yourself on. If you can otherwise prove, through released games that yes, you can do this, they will take a more serious look at you. And we talked a bit about networking. Won't go over that one again. Um, yeah, just keep learning. Keep making yourself more valuable. Keep developing your skill set. I don't have any tips that are unfortunately magically going to make money come out of walls for funding games or anything like that. I don't think there's really much of anything for that. But yeah, just
Sure, sure.
yeah, continue to work on yourself and continue to market yourself as as someone that can make games and do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not looking to you to solve all the world's problems. I just like to hear where people are coming from. I guess any last thought on maybe your biggest lesson learned that you did making Smiling Cat.
Biggest lesson learned. Yeah, it's vitally important to get your product out in front of people. And yeah, that was one of the, when I look back in retrospect on Smiling Cat, that was the one thing that just keeps coming up is I never really had a firm grasp on the social media.
Hmm.
There were out of out of all the roles in a game development studio, marketing and stuff was probably my weakest, and I think that kind of shows.
Yeah, I think that's a very astute point. I think you need to be constantly promoting your product. This is something that actually Arnold Schwarzenegger says. I remember he was doing like it was either a book he had written or maybe a new show or something was coming out. And somebody asked him, "Is like, you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, why are you doing this tour? Why are you all over?" And he's like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are. You always need to be selling because the world is a busy, bustling, noisy place. And unless you are standing in front of people talking to them, they're not going to know. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're not going to know that I'm doing anything. And
Right.
I think that is very important. That's again something like GDEX, where I tell indie devs like, come and showcase at GDEX. Like, I know it seems like it's a lot of money. Our booths are $400 this year, which includes electric, which is cool. But that's still, I mean, for a show our size, that's dirt cheap. But $400 is nothing to shake a stick at. But you get to be in front of not only however many hundreds or thousands of potential players, but then you also get to be in front of your colleagues and get to have meaningful conversations. And you just never know what cool idea will pop up from those conversations. So, Duke, I appreciate you being on the show. We're come to our end here. Is there any way for folks to follow you? You say you're not good at social media, but any place for folks to follow you or get a hold of you if they would like to?
Pretty much the only place I'm active these days is on the COG Discord.
Okay. Do you have a LinkedIn page or anything?
Uh, yeah,
I will take that as a no.
not a public facing one. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Duke, I really appreciate you being on the show. It was lovely to talk to you. It's been forever. Hopefully, I'll get to see you here soon at either a COG or hopefully before GDEX. But this has been episode 97 of the Sandbox.Space Weekly Podcast. I want to remind people that we have both GDEX tickets available and the exhibitor applications are now live. So go ahead to thegdex.com to check that out. And then also a reminder that we do this every Wednesday at 10 a.m. And then we post the videos to our YouTube channel. So feel free to check us out there for the Sandbox and the GDEX. But otherwise, I really appreciate you watching. On behalf of myself, Baby, Pumpkin, everybody in the chat, and our special guest, Duke, thank you for watching. And we will see you next week.
Thank you for having me on.